right. Good. So welcome. Let's see if we have anyone trickle in afterwards or during. Then Bianca, feel free to let them in or give me a signal if you want me to do it. We are here for another exclusive SUP 6 workshop. This time we're going to talk about cracking the code to people's success. And I'm very pleased to have Thomas here with us. The purpose of the workshop series is that we give you quick advice and input on how to improve your startup journey. And we invite experts to share their opinion. 45-minute session, 15 minutes Q&A. And as always, for best experience for everyone, keep your mics on mute unless you want to jump in. And that's up to Thomas to decide if you want to have like the hand emoji or if you just want people to unmute. That's up to you. And webcams on, way more fun. We'll share the recordings afterwards in our platform. And also, if requested, the deck as well. And thanks, Bianca, for coordinating. And don't forget to respond to the survey. Is the survey ready, Bianca? Perfect. So that really helps us. Like, we'll trigger before the Q&A, we'll trigger a survey that pops up in front of you. So please answer and give us feedback on like how we should improve those sessions. And what else? That's it. That's what I wanted to share. So again, pleasure to have Thomas here. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but we wanted to cover the topic of HR and people because it's so relevant for startups and often an area that people neglect. And we want to do our best to sort of surface important issues. So that's why we're really happy to have you here, Thomas, to share your perspective. So thanks for joining and leaving the mic to you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the welcome. And I'm happy to be here to talk about HR. I mean, in the beginning, we had a quite wide variety of topics since HR is a quite broad spectrum of services and necessities for the company to grow and continue on a journey. But today we will focus on culture and high-performing teams. I'm going to start a bit about myself as well. No, my button doesn't work. Okay, there we go. So my name is Thomas Eklöf. I work at Bossa Nova People Agency. We are a small HR agency helping and supporting foremost startups and scale-ups with kind of everything necessary for HR and people questions in your company. And we are partnered together with SUP. So if you have any questions or need assistance, please feel free to reach out after the event as well. But a little bit about myself. I am a HR consultant in basics, really. So we've been working with HR questions both in large corporations as a business partner and lately as a CHRO, so HR manager for different companies. I've been consulting myself as our own company for 5-6 years, and the last 2 years here at Bossa Nova, where we continue to help companies with different questions within HR. So we really have been involved with many startups and getting them to realize kind of the importance of the people agenda. So today, the topic is going to be pretty much about culture and especially how you manage culture and maintain culture while growing, and especially focusing on psychological safety, which is a true indicator for high-performing teams. Finally, I will kind of sum it up briefly with some key takeaways before we round up with a Q&A session in the end. And this content and this event session, I want you to also be involved with it yourself. So if I'm going to ask you a few questions along the way, and I hope you can find the time, kind of contribute yourself with your ideas and what kind of mistakes have you done and where we want to continue with your journey with your culture and your teams and how you can develop. So feel free when I invite you to chat or give me a shout in directly in Zoom as well. So culture. First off, what is culture? That's a big question. But in general, I mean, we talk about, I think most of you, we are aware of kind of national cultures. So we Swedes are in one way or different ways, and we can compare ourselves to different countries, Denmark and the States. And I mean, we all know that culture is a big part of the country's DNA, and it's the same thing in our corporations as well. So culture is really kind of the foundation of everything that kind of intertwines in the company. So it could be your values, which you often work with, which is kind of beliefs and sets of behaviors that you want your people to kind of follow by. So culture is really a crucial matter to everything you do in your company. And it's really created from kind of basic patterns, which kind of leads the way to what behaviors you accept and what you don't accept. So there's one way, and many companies, I'm guessing you yourself have been a part of companies who has values, probably 3 or 5 value keywords on the wall. And many times we don't really see that these values represent what's actually happening in the company. And often it comes down to what kind of behaviors do we want to see more of and what do we want to see less of. So culture can really set from any easy small behaviors. One example is that imagine you have your kind of team meetings and everything works well, and you have an agenda and your responsibility that it's important for you to be on time. So usually everyone is on time, and that's kind of the culture you set around meetings. But along comes a new employee, it doesn't really value the time in the same aspects as you do, and in the beginning they're late, which you okay, fine, they apologize for it, but after a while the same person keeps being late for their meetings, and after a while other people kind of believe that is it really important to be on time for us, or doesn't it really matter? So after a while that unwanted behavior perhaps in the beginning will in the end change the kind of culture around your meeting. So this will affect that after a while it is okay to be late, and then more people will be late. And in the end, that kind of small shift in just not taking care of the aspect that you don't want to have, so by not addressing the issue, you will be informing a new type of culture. So this is really a kind of basic example, but it really defines where culture comes from and how it evolves over time. Usually it's not something that we act upon or we address. This is the keywords we're working for, this is important. But on the other hand, it's more often kind of behaviors that we don't make how do you say, attack them head on instantly from the beginning. So really culture is something that finds their way into every aspect of your company and often creates subcultures, as you might have heard, through different teams, different departments. So different departments usually have a way of working that's not the same as other departments. And this is often because you don't have really a thought where you want your culture to grow. So I'm going to give you a bit of examples. So what can you really gain from a great culture? So there's lots of studies, and throughout almost 50, 60 years back, there's been many numbers. I'm just going to give you some examples. So great culture can really increase your revenue. It can increase your productivity with 50% and also decrease your employee turnover. So these are just a few examples. And one of the books that I found a great indicator for culture and how it affects company in a large scale was Good to Great, written by Jim Collins, among others. He really goes down deep into research into how do the best companies succeed over time and why do they do it. And what they found really is that culture and kind of leadership, leaders' values that are shown inside the company and that are consistent over time really is some of the true indicators for success over time. So culture really isn't something fluffy and part of HR. It's really necessity to be successful in the long run. And while you're growing in the beginning, it might be a few employees. It's only perhaps you and your co-founders, or even you have someone early on board. In the beginning, people are super invested in your mission and kind of the purpose of your company, and there's always a high level of employee experience. People are really engaged in what they do and have fun while doing it and passionate about it. But there's also a clear sign of kind of low level of documented processes along the way. You just often, it's really from the founders that the values and the company culture begins forming. So usually in that area, there's no need for kind of documents. But when you start taking kind of on more people, you might take for granted your culture, that this is always going to be the case, but this is the feeling we have today. But the direction of your culture can really go either way. So, I mean, if you're still working in a similar way and adopt more people, in the end, culture and kind of team performance will change, because usually a team environment, team development really changes if you change 50% of the team. So having kind of structure for it is really crucial. Otherwise, it tends to go against more people just coming in, working for money, doing their job, but maybe you lose the kind of high levels of employee experience that you have in the beginning. So what you really want to do, and really is important, is kind of realize, how do we keep this culture while we're growing? So how can we maintain the behaviors we want to see in our company that will help us reach our goals, that will help us collaborate and innovate as we want to? So to be a great employer, it's really about finding those answers. So you need to really understand, what kind of behaviors do we really want here in our company? How can we foster and maintain these fundamentals in our culture? And that really will set you a path for becoming the great employer you want to be. So the kind of first,
can I
yeah,
just jump in with I noticed that you wrote increased revenue earlier. I think also increased profits even.
Of course,
if
sure.
you're, I don't think that was written, but
no,
if you can create a culture that keeps your employees excited about the mission and the purpose of the company and become those like ambassadors, then it's much easier, at least for what I've noticed empirically, that it's easier to work with stock option programs and things that incentivizes them in other ways than just money, right? Which lower the cost, the daily cost of the company, the cash burn as well, and therefore increasing profits. So I think it's just wanted to quickly mention that.
And you're right. And I think many times, especially in startups, I think the key factor is usually kind of options or stock benefits in the long run. But I think to really create engagement and motivated employees and a culture of trust, it's more about forming your teams and having kind of the clear boundaries for where you're going and kind of helping them to achieve what you want to achieve. So giving boundaries, but giving them freedom to do what they do best, without you as a manager or leader kind of telling them where you want to go and telling them what to do. You need to really be in a mindset, a growth mindset, to kind of open their eyes and how you as a leader can assist them, helping you and them to reach your mission and kind of where you want to go with the company. So I think stock options are usually something that we always talk about in the early stage, but for me, it's not necessarily, or not even structure for engagement. It's more about perhaps attracting them in the beginning. That's where the value is with those kind of options. But in the long run, I don't think that external motivators such as money will be a factor for engagement over long periods of time. Usually it's a limited period of time you will gain motivation, but over time, it's more about how you collaborate, where you're going, and how people align with that kind of vision. So
Interesting,
to be able to kind of understand your culture, you really need to understand, why are we successful? And if you don't know, you need to start asking those questions. And I think the common problem is that we always learn early on we need to create a business plan. This is foundation for us to get investment or getting started with a business. We need to know what our business plan is. But many times we kind of ignore the people aspect of it. And I know for a fact, and I believe you do as well, that kind of the people you onboard, the talent you have is crucial, especially when you're a small company, but along the way as well. So understanding that the people you choose to bring on board will be a key crucial fact if you, part one, survive, and part two, will thrive as well. So creating a people plan on and how to get people on board, how to get them motivated, how to kind of set the frame for your culture to keep them engaged over time is really a crucial part you need to be aware of from the beginning. So really it's going down to what are we doing today to kind of maintaining that culture, and how do we get our people to take us where we want to go. So this is kind of the foundations of understanding your culture. And if you go a bit deeper, and here I really want you kind of think yourself where you are today, and really have some moments to reflect on these questions. And if you want, please share in the chat. I will give you a minute or two. But first off, kind of figure out what are we doing good today, what can we do better, but only more focused on what behaviors do you want to see more, not kind of the results, because the result will change, it will differ, you will make mistakes, but the behaviors that are the foundation before the results, that's the key in identifying your culture. And what do we want to see less of? If it's important you be on time, you want to make sure that you focus on that early on, so it doesn't evolve into standing part of your culture. So please take a few minutes, and if you have already answers to especially kind of the behaviors that you want to see more of and you want to see less of, please share directly here in Zoom, unmute and add your thoughts. Otherwise, if you want to write in the chat, feel free to do so as well. Does anyone, you want a minute or two?
Can I start?
Please.
One thing that I enjoy with our culture is, like, we have a strong heritage of being very startup friendly and very like customer centric, so to speak, and very like heart first. And I think that we're quite good at preserving that culture, which is good. It goes both from the members and startups perspective, but also in the team. I think it resonates a lot. So that I think we're not great at it, but I think we're good and in a good direction. And then when it comes to what I think we should improve with culture, I think we can definitely be way more transparent with everything, both internally and externally. And also I have a super bad habit of being late to meetings and stuff, which you actually pointed at in the beginning was like spot on. I was like, oh shit, did we talk about this before the workshop? We didn't, but it's like, yeah, it doesn't resonate with my values, but I have really issues being in time to certain meetings. And I don't want that signal to be like, oh shit, I don't care about people's time, or I'm trying to be disrespectful. It's nothing about that, but I'm concerned that that might be how it
resonates
between the lines, what sort of is the message that being sent out.
So. And it's a great to kind of, I want to catch up on what you said. It's not something that comes from your values really, but it's just a behavior that turns up probably from many different reasons, but in the end it goes down to your values. It goes against your values. So it really going back to kind of how we create companies most to today is they set their values, but in reality it's the behaviors that really set the tone. So that's what I mean. It's not always you can kind of agree upon the values, but if you show it in a different way in your behaviors, then that's really what matters, because that sets the culture, not your true values. So you need to really work on those aspects as well. Johan or Meli, sorry, is that right pronunciation, or Dan? Do you have any key takes you want to share?
Yeah, maybe I can also add something. Actually, I haven't thought much about it, but I can say that I like working with people who are self-starter and bring ideas or challenge my ideas, my opinions, and sometimes like criticize me even the times when I have strong opinion. Then of course, even the worst time, then respect each other at the end, no matter what our differences. And I also like working with people who are coming from different culture, different societies. I think that's really rich the company, because then you see the things on a different perspective that you are not used to it, and it actually brings the value to the company. And once you are at the market, I believe that that makes it easier to sell whatever you do or be better whatever you do. It also improves yourself personally.
Yeah,
Those are the
sure.
things that I mostly care and looking for people that I am working with. Also, like people, it's not only just sometimes who brings money,
No.
just excites me, and the energy they bring. It's also very important, because sometimes we are dealing with many uncertainties or crazy times. And when I see someone is in a good mood, even the worst situation, it just changes our mood in a better way.
Definitely. Oh, good examples, and that's also something that you need to kind of be positive and lift up from time to time, because that is something giving that kind of energy also needs to be given back as well. So that's a key factor to sustaining it, I think, is to appreciate it and keep it alive in that sense. Thanks for sharing.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Should we move on, or does anyone else want to share something before we go?
Yeah, I have one point, Thomas. Yeah. Very nice start so far. One of the things is I've been a consultant for many years, and we tend to be very physical, and we put things on the wall. And now I'm driving a startup where we are remote first. So we have people in the US, India, Macedonia, me in Sweden. And it seems like creating a strong culture requires a bit of a different playbook when you're running remote first company. So if you, during your presentation, can give us a few hints and tips and tricks on, what kind of, how to create energy, but also not only on Teams and Zoom meetings, making sure that people come on time, etc. But, having some, what is a modern playbook in a remote first startup looking like? That would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'll take it into consideration. I'll probably get back to it in the end as well. So thanks for that. But let's continue a bit, because this is really how to get started. It's more about figuring these questions out. So I kind of postponed this. Let's move on. So really, for me, a key factor to culture is, especially for startups, because you usually are a small team, remote or physical, you're a small team, and you need kind of you want innovation, you want a lot of communications to be able to evolve into the direction you want to evolve to. So psychological safety is really a key factor into creating that kind of performance in your team and that safety and trust that you want in your team. So first off, I just wonder, do you all know the concept of psychological safety? Have you heard it before, or what is do you have any, then please share your general first idea. What do you think psychological safety is?
Like Melly mentioned, there's enough room and little judgment so people can have respect but still debate, and provide an environment where people can say, I disagree this, I feel like we're doing this wrong, or something like that. I don't know if
Very good, I would say.
related.
Yeah, very good, I would say. Anyone else that want to add on or have a different opinion? No, but I think it was pretty spot on. And I think Amy Edmondson, which I will talk a little bit about, she defines psychological safety as this: a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistake. So it's pretty much spot on, and I noticed that as well when you gave your share your thoughts. I think it really comes down to that you are having that feeling of safety, that you want to challenge common ideas, you want to have opinions, and you want to questions and ask questions, and aren't afraid of making mistakes, and especially you aren't afraid of what the reaction will be. So it really comes down to kind of the mutual respect towards each other, that everyone here in this room is here to contribute and add value and bring us further along, and not kind of question my idea or something like that. They just have another perspective. So you need to find that common grounds in how you communicate as well, which is the foundation for this, but especially kind of really avoiding unnecessary behaviors that really shut you down and makes you feel like unappreciated and even humiliated. I mean, that's really kind of the worst feeling you want anyone else to have, because that just means that they will not ask those questions again. They will not be comfortable in shouting out if you see a risk or something like that. Then people rather sit quiet. So one key kind of question is to understand how safe your environment is to kind of ask yourself, so how are our team meetings when we discuss general matters? Is it loud? Is everyone involved, or is it only a few people that are taking the tone and kind of asking and tumbling on, or is everyone involved and engaged in these questions or not? So that's kind of a thought for you to understand how well or how safe your teams are and your companies in general. So, but continuing on, and kind of if you start first on Amy Edmondson, she's kind of the main scientist that has been propaganda on the psychological safety. I think she even coined the term psychological safety, but research goes back further than that, so she wasn't the first one. But what she's done is really make it a more global phenomenon and something that many companies see as a key factor into performance. This also comes into play from Project Aristoteles, which was a large project from Google. So they did a 2 or 3 year long study on kind of what is the key factor, what is the foundations for high performing teams here at Google. So what they did is really try to understand, and then studied over 180 teams worldwide to understand what is the factor here, which teams are the high performing and why are they doing that. So they had many hypotheses that he asked around and kind of figured out that it's probably because people are, when they're friends, they will work together, or when we have kind of the high performers, the really standalone stars within the company, their teams will be the highest performing teams. And many other questions that they kind of hypothesis around. But in the end, they collected all the data. They did many personality tests as well, group dynamics, surveyed skills, and etc. And the only thing that really showed consistent and robust statistical significance was these 5 factors, and where psychological safety was by far the most crucial for team performance. So it wasn't really about specific characters. It was, and the foundation they saw is for psychological safety was that members feel safe to ask questions, and also everyone is involved with the key facting questions that you have on board. So everyone feels like they want to contribute, and if they don't, managers or unofficial leaders, they make sure that people who usually sit more quiet, they are invited into the discussion. I think one famous example of this is that Saturday Night Live were a successful and still are a successful TV show over many years, and the writers and the people behind the series, they had a really intense debating from before every showing, and how would they set it up, and everyone was really engaged and involved and interrupted each other. Going on without any kind of limitations. No one was afraid of being shut down, and probably they were quite shut down, but it wasn't in a sense towards you as a person. maybe your idea, but your idea is open for the table, it's open for criticism. And they were always in the mindset, how can we make this better? A great idea, but how can we make it better? So it was a climate where the trust was extremely high, and the effect was a really successful show over a very long period of time, which is pretty unheard of in the television market. But Google did not only see that psychological safety was the factor as well. So I want to give short brief kind of what the other factors were as well. So dependability means that the teams within had trust against each other. So they trusted their own teammates to fulfill whatever responsibility they had. So there was a trust that I will not, do you have this responsibility? This is your cup of tea, and I'm sure this person will manage it. Another fact was structure and clarity. So people had kind of clear roles, there were plans, there were goals. So there was a surrounding atmosphere that people knew where they were going and how they're going to do it, pretty much. Also, meaningfulness was important. They really felt it was personally important, the work that they did. And as a consequence, also, they knew that their impact mattered. So their job meaningfulness was really high. They knew that the impact they made really created results. And this was Google. I mean, it's a multi-global and multi-national gigantic company. So even though it's thousands and thousands of employees, the highest performing teams really felt that they would make an impact into the company's success. So if they can do it, you can definitely do it as well. So the foundations, if you go a bit deeper for high-performing teams, is definitely something that springs out of psychological safety, which means that we want to create a better understanding of each other and our differences. So we really want the mindset that we are curious, we are open to other ideas, we are interested in their perspective. So you need to really go back to kind of the mindset. So as a company, you can always set kind of these boundaries, but if you don't help people to kind of change their mindset into trusting each other and really think that their teammates have value and their value is important for the group. And this is often quite difficult as well, but over time it definitely is possible. And another aspect was, especially from Amy Edmondson, who kind of in the beginning, before she set the frame psychological safety, she did many research. This was in the university and in medical environment where teams, and kind of her hypothesis was that the highest performing teams were the ones with fewest mistakes. As it turns out, it was the complete opposite. The highest performing teams are the ones who are making the most mistakes. And I mean, you would think that that would be the obvious, but it turns out that what she realized is that the teams that had most mistakes were the ones that often declared the mistakes. As we go back earlier, what I was telling you is that people who are in an environment where they're afraid of speaking up, then people tend to be quiet, tend to just sit down and don't add their perspective and criticize the system or the company or whatever it could be. So instead of, oh no, this might be a problem, I'd rather be quiet and just, it won't affect us too much. But every kind of small decision like that is really bad for innovation and collaboration. So mistakes are detected earlier in high-performing teams. And collaboration, hence, is also improved. And then back to what you said, Sebastian, before, there is an increase in creativity, productivity, which in turn will give you straight profit margins, and revenue will increase, and etc. And what basics is for, also kind of framing the problem, as Edmondson tells it, is that we need to see the business not as a problem we need to overcome. Of course, if you have a product that physically solves a problem, fine, but really it's about how you go about your company. You need to create a learning frame set so that the problems and everyday challenges that we face, we need to see it as a problem to solve. So how can we do this better? How can we learn from our mistakes? So instead of making the pressure that we need to be faster, perform better, or just keeping kind of the high, squeezing everything out from your employees, you need to set the framework for a learning mindset instead. How can we be better? How can we change? How can we do it differently? And test. So it goes a lot with agility as well. And so how can you create psychological safety as a leader? I would say create a culture then for openness and respect. So I think it's a great example, as you mentioned before, Mila, it's that kind of you want the context to be open and respectful. And as a leader, that's your responsibility to set the tone. So even if you're in remote context, as we do here today, we share our video screens, we look at each other, we still see body language and other stuff, which is important. So creating it in a remote context, it's even more important that you invite people in to the conversation. Often at times, it's otherwise people who are more dominant or that are more consistent in kind of giving their ideas that usually then speak the most. So you as a leader need to kind of set the framework that involves everyone who usually don't maybe have the dominant status to kind of give their opinions unless asked upon. And of course, create an environment where it's okay to make these mistakes, which means that if someone makes mistakes, you as a leader cannot go there and kind of, you need to correct this. Why did you do this? Kind of have this attacking mentality, because if creating psychological safety is hard, it's incredibly easy to destroy it. So it really comes down to keeping this and maintaining this is important, and how you behave. And it could goes down to really micro behaviors such as rolling your eyes or giving sighs, or many small micro behaviors that people tend to, they still observe it. So they still have the feeling that they're not valued and they're not appreciated. So you need to really look to yourself as a leader. Am I showing any of these negative behaviors? And can I change? And how do we address when someone else shows these behaviors? This is really crucial for kind of maintaining the positive safety you want, is to address these issues early on. And that's the easy way is through continuous feedback, recognition, both of course more focused on the positive aspects, outcomes, positive behaviors you want to see, but also kind of finding ways on minimizing the behaviors you don't want to see. Focus on collaboration, of course. I mean, we talked about it a bit. And developing strong leadership skills is really key then. So how can what kind of behaviors are we looking at then? Efficient teams ask more questions. So if your team doesn't do this today, you as leader need to start making those questions. So it really comes down to people will mimic the behaviors of the leaders or the strong members of a team and will adapt accordingly. So if you as a team leader then ask a lot more open-minded questions, be aware of that. It needs to be open-minded questions and not direct closed questions. So keeping an open environment. And then continuing on exploring their perspectives on the matters. And especially boost each other. I think you all know that great team performance, you really feel that you have each other's backs and you boost each other and see how you can help. And as a leader, I think here it comes down to, so how can I help you really? How can I as a manager help you performing better in your job? So give strengths and feedback on those topics. And on the other way around, asking open questions requires you to actively listen to the responses as well. And I think this is something I do sometimes too much, is kind of giving my opinion on the questions at hand. So instead of kind of indulging my inner self-affirmation, really, to kind of see that I understand what you're going through, it's better to kind of even go back and listen before you speak. and kind of mirror what the other person is saying. So I understand you correctly. You want to set this and this, or you want to do this. Oh, okay. And then you can add on. When you first show that you have listened to the idea, people will feel appreciated and also open to changing or adapting their ideas as well. And you should start that. This is something you as manager can really do, is to set these boundaries for every meeting or every, so even if you're remote, I think this is crucial as well, that in every end of the meeting, ask for feedback. So how can we be better as a team? And those questions come down to kind of specific questions. You can do what everyone else does. What can you improve? What can we change? What we need to begin with or start with? And I'm going to get back to these as well. So going further, I think as a leader, creating, so going back to Google study, it's about clear roles, clear vision. Where do we want to go with the company? And leave the how to the employees. So how can you assist your employees to do their best work? Not micromanaging them to giving them too much information or directives, and especially not being too involved and checking in too often to see if they're really progressing. Of course, you need to set some certain guidelines on where and how fast you want to get there, but in the meantime, just leave it be and let them do their job. So frequent check-ins instead, it's better. How is it going? How are you doing? Can I support you? It's better than the opposite around. What are the results? How far have you come in this? Are you near deadline? Will you be on time or whatever? So more open-ended, supportive questions. And creating behaviors, then asking this question, listen, active, and sharing mistakes, as I said before. So what I want you to do now is really to give yourself, we don't have to share now, but please do think of your own leadership skills and in your own team. What can you start doing today? What do you want to do more now in your teams that you feel is in line with how you create psychological safety, and what you want to stop doing? And I think, Sebastian, as you said, maybe stop being late for meetings would be something to start with for you, and finding ways to then manage your timetable and then especially kind of communicating that you see it's important to your co-workers and your colleagues that and still you're trying to do your best. And even though if you make mistakes, be aware of it and talk about it. Is better than just neglecting it and minding your own business kind of attitude. So it's better to raise the problem, talk about it, and trying to feel challenge and how you can overcome these challenges as well. So please, you can bring those questions with you, and as Sebastian said, you will get the presentation afterwards as well. So I really want you to take the time now to see if you can start doing something tomorrow already. And some perspective, as I've told you, here's some key advice, as we already talked about. So kind of to summarize what you want with your culture and psychological safety. In the beginning, you have probably an awesome culture, but you need to start identifying. So back to remote work is as well the same. So you are probably digital first, and you probably have every meeting you are webcam on and kind of setting those structures. But if you haven't, I think those meetings is really important. And of course, there might be too many, but instead focusing on what is a good meeting for us and identifying those aspects and what is the key takeaway for every meeting, I think is even more important when you only have remote first meetings. But giving you some tips on building culture while growing in a global environment. Culture is possible, of course, to create and is created in a remote first company, but usually it's really beneficial to have one or two possibilities to meet up once or twice a year where you can really get to know each other. So I think the physical environment is really crucial for building sustainable relationship and building relationship beyond what your company is doing. and people trust people where they know a bit more about themselves. So what you can do in your remote context then is trying to integrate these kind of behaviors and getting people to share more about themselves if possible. But it's really up to you, back to kind of what you want your culture to be. Some companies, they want to keep their personal life apart, then that's up to you. But creating a more culture and robust is, I think, necessary to kind of get to know each other a bit better. And especially focus on kind of course, the encourage behaviors you want to see, but mark against behaviors that opposes the culture you want. And this is where we often make mistakes. What I see is that you tend just to avoid it. It's not a big problem. And in the end, if you have that mentality, then it will become a problem. Especially if you have team members who don't perform, it's way better to address it early on and why they're not performing, and assist them then to perform better than to have 6 months later, see, you don't perform, sorry, we have to let you go. So same question there is mark against behavior, help your employees to know what you expect of them. And start with yourself. You as a leader is usually the critical part of creating safety in the workspace. Yeah, that was pretty much in summary, and over for Q&A.
Awesome, Thomas. Thanks for the presentation. I'm gonna trigger, as promised, a survey. So that should pop up in your like a pretty fast survey. Just send me your feedback. And while we're waiting for that, I have like one thing that I noticed. Like, I don't know if you other guys, you can also jump in with questions, but I would love to jump in with one question that stuck with me in the presentation. Is the one that like you focus on a vision as a leader and you leave the how to the employees. Sometimes when you're dealing with employees from other cultures, especially when you have like a global team, there are other geographical cultures that even confuses the team more. Because I've noticed, for example, when I try to apply this methodology, didn't do it perfectly, obviously, but tried to apply it to a Chinese employee who was reporting to me. I couldn't get her to have a problem-solving mindset. She just wanted me to tell her what to do. And that was a complete culture clash. And I said, like, yeah, this is the goal. Figure it out, right? And she's like, figure out what? Like, just tell me what to do. Yeah. And it was a huge culture clash. So I'm just like, want to hear your perspective on like, okay, where, like, is this a like a very flat organization / Western civilization / startup culture influence thing that is not applicable globally, or like, yeah, I just want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I know a friend of mine, he worked in London and worked in a very kind of open environment. He has had a team, and they were really self sufficient and then could do their work without his managing anything pretty much. And then he moved to Singapore, which it's quite similar to the kind of cultural hierarchy, in that the manager is the one that tells you what to do and how to do it, and that's pretty much what you expect from the workplace. But he managed to kind of overcome over a period of time. So I think it's definitely is cultural differences, but if it's possible to make those changes, definitely, which he succeeded with as well. So I think that it takes time to change that perspective, and there's a lot of unlearning and relearning and learn new ways, new pathways, and in many aspects, your mindset in how you work and what you expect from a company, etc. So there are many aspects in that kind of culture you need to change, but it definitely is possible, and you will see a great effect in the outcome of the team, I would suppose, as well. Yes, question, feel free.
Yep. I have actually too many, but one regarding psychological safety, Thomas. And by the way, thank you so much for your presentation and sharing your thoughts and experience. So how can you balance between making your colleagues feel safe and at the same time not make them too comfortable or be too nice, so that push them to achieve to get their full potential?
No, that's good. And I think Emerson has a model called the learning zone. So it's definitely a common question with managers. So how about accountability? If we only have a safe environment, will they actually achieve what I hope they can achieve? So I think it really comes down to setting their roles and clear responsibility and setting the guideline. But there isn't an opposite side of it. You can have both accountability and a psychological safe environment. But if you only focus on kind of the safety and don't give people expectations and accountability for what they are to achieve, then you will have kind of the comfort zone. People will be happy and like your job, but they probably won't achieve the numbers that you want to hope. So on the other way around, which I think is even more common, is that you tend to give people a lot of accountability, a lot of stressors or performance. So you want the maximum performance, but there is no safety. Then you will be kind of in what she calls the anxiety zone. So people will be feeling high level of stress. They will be more vulnerable to exhaustion and stuff like that. So that kind of environment is not something you want to set either. So you want them to feel safe and have high accountability, and then you will be in the what she calls the learning zone. So I think definitely it is possible, but it's up to you to kind of set where you want to go and how you think they will contribute, and be open for the feedback as well.
Then that brings me for my second question. So that how can I provide constructive feedback or offer constructive criticism to my colleagues without like causing harm or feeling bored?
It's if you don't give any feedback or pretty much don't have that in your culture today, it's going to be a process over time to change the mindset. That because often when we get criticism, it's really hard and it's really tough for your mental state, and you will go through different phases, or no, it wasn't me, it was this, or no, so I mean, it's a step towards giving and receiving feedback. You need to learn as well, but if you start somewhere, you need to continue. So what you should do is really to ask for feedback in the beginning. Ask for feedback. What can I do better? I hold this presentation. What can I do better for the next time? We had a meeting. I talked a lot. Can I change anything? So you, instead of asking for feedback in the beginning, or giving feedback, you need to ask for feedback, because then people will be more safe to ask for feedback themselves. And it's not until they really open for feedback, they will not appreciate it. So setting that kind of culture is really about destigmatizing negative feedback. So if feedback is something part of your daily work, then it's not as stigmatized as it will be in the beginning.
Okay, one more, the last. So sometimes I give criticism with a like strong tone, and I think I kind of enjoy it too. I love it and I love debating, you know.
Yeah.
But I also understand that being a bit harsh, like not everyone can take it. And yeah, I know it save us time to take everything out when you like just talk with a
I think giving that feedback, because I mean, for me, I honestly I love what Netflix, they have there's a book called Radical Candor, and which is extremely straightforward, no fluff, really spot on. This is, I see that you make this and this, you need to change your behavior or do it differently, and this will affect us. So really harsh, but really effective. But as well, you need to kind of progress into that, because you need to be aware that each individual is different. So you need to understand how your communication. So probably you need to work a bit more on your communication, setting the tone and in the right context. I think then people will appreciate it over time. But if you, from on to time, yes, shout out different feedback, then some people will take it in the wrong way. And some people who learn to get to know you, they will understand that it's not something for me personally, but I can probably progress here. but it takes time for people to get to know you, perhaps. So you should be aware of that in the beginning before maybe you have set the kind of trust level you want.
And I think it differentiates from culture to culture, country to country.
Of course.
Okay. Thank you so much, Thomas.
I can. Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Just one comment on that. I can just give my view of how feedback has been progressing in our company, and it all started with setting clear goals for everyone. So that makes feedback more constructive and more kind of makes sense to have like a continuous feedback loop, meaning that you often have feedback that is positive, and you can add in a mix of things that really doesn't perform in the way that you want to, but that makes it more like you do it in a structured way. So that has helped a lot for us. I mean, as a small company, you kind of goals and specific like personal indicators and how to like structure your goals into personal goals and things like that seemed a bit too much in the beginning, but once it was done, kind of helped out a lot. So yeah, I would say if you haven't done it, that would be a recommendation.
And that's what I mean, going back to kind of getting those structures, that's really important, I think, because as you said, I think you always need to have a lot more, I think, like 5 times more positive feedback than criticism. So if you have that kind of ratio, I think you'll be good when they're ready for the negative aspects of it as well.
I have a question, Thomas.
Yeah, sure.
More startup related. I mean, there is you mentioned about the person and the culture around the founder and those kind of aspects of going from that into like a normal structured company where that kind of cult needs to change. Do you have any like key takeaways for that kind of transformation?
I think first off, I don't think it needs to change. It needs to be more structured. What kind of behaviors from you as a leader founder was beneficial and what will keep you on the same track. So identifying your values and what you bring to the table and what has been successful, and keeping those stuff. And if there's something that you know that might be a bottleneck or something, you need to kind of move away from the negative side. So you need to identify what are the key aspects that you think will help you keep growing and focus on those. So really back to identifying those factors, and that will help you make it more understandable that it comes down to you, because still people will look at you, they will see you as the leader, so they will mimic whatever you're doing. So you still need to be aware of what you're doing and not doing, because that will set the tone regardless what kind of structure you have in place. So you need to find how those intertwine with each other.
Yeah. We are I'm pasted Thomas' email address in the chat. I want to wrap it up here because we're out of time and out of respect for your calendars. Just want to mention we have a perks collaboration, as Thomas mentioned in the beginning. So check out that link to the platform where it's more like HR on demand is the sort of the framework, but I'm sure you'll answer like deep dives on those topics as well.
Yes.
Next up is 20th of June we're going to talk about growth versus marketing and how you build those teams. And next week on Wednesday, we're going to have a workshop after work at the A House, where we're going to eat pizza and drink beers. So hope everyone can make it. Thomas, thanks so much for tuning in.
Thank you.
And everyone else for joining. We'll share the information afterwards and add it to the platform. And you and me, Thomas, will jump on the fireside chat in a couple of minutes.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a good day. Bye.